my name is Jerry Smith. I'm an ordinary guy. I have chestnut hair and brown eyes. I got average grades in high school and in college. I'm in good shape for my age, which is 42. I work as a middle manager in a retail clothing chain. I grew up in a tough neighborhood, and my size caused me some trouble there. If you give up, you get beaten to a pulp. So I never backed down to anyone. Sometimes I was shown who was boss in the area, but usually I was the one punishing the opponent. Over time, troubles happened to me much less frequently than before. Nonetheless, I continued training in a boxing gym until about 10 years ago, when I stopped these activities. Some of us practiced mixed martial arts. It was much harder, and it was my only hobby. I am married to Joanne, who is 42 years old, a brunette with a slim figure and a very beautiful face. We met in our first year of university. She was studying law, but we took 2 courses together. Initially, we just talked. Then we started dating. Joanne was quite popular in school. All the fraternity guys wanted to be with her, but she was reserved with them. As far as I could see, we became a steady couple and got closer in our second year. It was her first time, and almost the same for me. We stayed together until graduation. She got into law school in the state. I got a job at a local bank. We got married that summer after finishing school and got along very well. It took Joanne 3 years to finish law school. All this time, I supported us, thanks to my job at the bank. Joanne was very smart and graduated top of her class. Then she got a job offer from a large firm in Washington and was very eager to take it. I looked for a job in the area and found a position as a bank branch manager. We moved to Washington. There, we rented an apartment in the city, close to her work. I had to commute to the suburbs, but I could do that by bike or metro. We didn't have a car. The first year in Washington was tough. Joanne worked maybe 65, 70 hours a week. I worked less, but I cooked dinner, did the laundry, and cleaned the house. She earned as much as I did, and it seemed like her salary would be increased annually. We were in good financial shape, but our personal life suffered. We saw each other about twice a month. When we did, it wasn't as good as before, although we usually enjoyed each other's company. After a while, Joanne started coming home late from work. Dinner was cold. Even if I waited, I started to wonder about us, especially about her. I tried to understand what her work life was like. She didn't talk much about it at home. She was working with a group of lawyers and paralegals on a corporate merger deal. As the merger date approached, she was home less and less. One Friday, I went to surprise her during her lunch break. I knew she didn't like to eat alone, so I decided to take her to a nearby place for a snack. I arrived at noon, but the secretary said Joanne had left for the day. Where did she go? To court? No, I'm not sure where, but I guess her group went out for lunch, probably to Cicero. The secretary looked funny when she said that. Well, it's lunch. Why for the rest of the day? Maybe I'll see her at home earlier. The secretary looked down. Maybe. I saw she was very uncomfortable and said goodbye. Thank you. Leaving the office, I headed to the metro station across from the restaurant Cicero. Buying a tuna and cheese sandwich, I sat outside and watched the street. About an hour later, Joanne left the restaurant with a group of people. There was another woman, Lydia, whom I knew from social events. There were 3 men with them. 2 were in their 30s, both large men. The third was older, graying, not as big. I assumed he was Paul Dorgon, the head of Joanne's department at the firm and a partner. I didn't know the other 2. Joanne walked between the 2 younger men. One was dark-haired, and the other had light chestnut hair and a beard. Perhaps I had seen them at a social event, but I wasn't sure. I crossed the street to intercept them. The dark-haired guy hugged my wife by the waist. She didn't pull away. I ran up to them from behind and tapped Joanne on the shoulder. She turned to see who it was and, turning pale, said, "Oh, Jerry, what are you doing here?" The guy was still hugging her, even though she turned to me. He looked upset. Joanne stepped away from him. Fred, this is my husband, Jerry. Maybe you've met him at the picnic. Joanne blushed. The other three seemed unsettled too. Paul Dorgon stepped forward, extending his hand. Jerry, I'm Paul. I indeed remember you from the picnic. You were playing softball. I shook his hand, still looking at Fred. He was over 6 feet tall and stocky. I did play softball. And indeed, at the picnic. Usually, I play hardball. I was still looking at Fred, and he stared right back at me. Fred, maybe we should do this right now, I said. He couldn't respond immediately, and Paul didn't give him the chance. Jerry, calm down. We were all just out for lunch. The merger deal is done. We had a little celebration. Now we're heading back. I think maybe Fred got a little carried away. Joanne had recovered enough to speak. Jerry, I hope you don't make a mistake. Fred might have just overdone the celebration a bit. I kept my eyes on Fred, and he didn't look away. I smiled. His hands were clenched into fists. He was tense, ready to fight. I waited for him. I was completely relaxed. Physical confrontation was one of the things I enjoyed most in life. It could happen at any moment. Fred's bearded friend grabbed him from behind and pulled him aside. Fred tried to resist, but Paul yelled at him. Stop right now! Take him away, Bill! Fred eased up, allowing Bill to lead him away. By this time, a small crowd had gathered. Joanne stood between me and her colleagues. Jerry, you have nothing to worry or be upset about. Nothing happened. Paul spoke up. Joanne, maybe you should take the rest of the day off. Go home with your husband. There's not much to do now, and tomorrow is another day. Okay, thank you, Paul. Come on. Jerry, let's take a walk. I said, I'm very disappointed. I'll have to go to the gym later. But I left with her. We headed to our apartment. It was in the opposite direction from her office. But that was the direction they were all going when they left the restaurant. The remaining 4 turned around and walked back to Cicero and their office. Quite an eloquent gesture, in my opinion. Joanne and I walked through the city for about 30 minutes or so. We hardly said anything. When we got back home and entered, I brought us some water. I sat on the couch, and she sat opposite me on a dining chair. I said, so tell me what happened. Everything about this event. There's not much to tell. You jumped to conclusions. He was just hugging me with one arm. Several mistakes in your response, and I'm sure you know that. You're lying and underestimating me. I'm not a fool. Even if I'm not a lawyer. Don't lie to me anymore. Her face somehow crumpled. She said nothing and started breathing rapidly. Just calm down and tell me what's going on. I know you took the rest of the day off from work. I know you were all leaving work when I saw you. And what's more important? Good old Fred was ready to fight right there. On the street, he was going to try to hit me. If Bill hadn't grabbed him, we would have fought right there. So I think he has some feelings for you that make him hostile towards your husband. She started to cry, quietly, without sobbing. We all worked so hard. We all got close. Especially, Fred and I worked well together. He wanted to celebrate this event alone with me. And I agreed. Would you have brought him here? No. He said he had a room at the Hyatt. Where were the others going? They were also heading to the Hyatt. The 3 of them had another room. Is Fred married? Yes. He has a 2-year-old son. She cried again. Have you had any pleasant moment in bed with him so far? If you lie, and I find out, and I will find out, I'll leave you. Nothing like that. A couple of kisses, hugs, no undressing. What about the other 3? Is this a usual thing for them? I think Bill and Lydia might have met secretly a few times. Paul just wanted to watch. Are Bill and Lydia married? To others? Yes, Paul is too, but his wife is ill. Have you ever cheated on me besides this case? No, and this wasn't cheating. You saved me. There's no significant difference. You've destroyed all my trust in you. I think if I had slept with him, it would have been a big difference compared to what happened today. But I see that trust can be a problem. I don't know what to say. I will never allow myself to be in such a situation again. You say that now, but what happens at your work on Monday? They all will want to know what we talked about. Besides, that guy Fred won't give up, whether he has a kid or no kid. I saw how strong his feelings for you are. What are you going to do about it? Maybe you should quit this job. I can't just leave. We need the money. And I like this job. I'm really good at it, and I'll be getting promotion after promotion. I understand. How am I supposed to know if you're staying on the straight line? Because I need some reassurance. Let me think. I thought about it. Leverage was necessary, and leverage had to be found. Here's what. You'll write a confession. It will contain everything you've told me, even more detailed. You'll sign it and give it to me. Why? Oh, I see. It will be a threat to them all. Yes. I'll make copies for them all. And add a little note. I want you to swear to the truth of the confession under penalty of perjury. So we did. She detailed what happened and even her suspicions about what was going on among the others. Then we went to dinner at a cafe further down the street. She relaxed considerably after we shared a bottle of red. Then we returned home and immediately went upstairs. Quickly undressed, and she fell to her knees. And finally, exhausted, we fell asleep. In the morning, I made copies of the confession. I put them in 4 envelopes marked personal and confidential, and added a note. In it, I made it clear that if I learn of any further schemes involving my wife, in any case, I would mail the confession to all their spouses. An exception would be made for anyone who informed me about her. In that case, no mail would be sent to that person's spouse. I thought it would create some tension in the team, but did it make it any easier for me? It was Saturday, and I went to the gym for some sparring and heavy bag work to vent some remaining anger. Well, maybe there wasn't that much. The guys noticed it. I had trouble finding a partner, but the heavy work on the punching bag did its job. Jane, one of the few women who trained at this gym, asked me what was wrong. Just some life issues. I'll figure it out. She smiled. Despite her hobby, she was a cutie with a nice figure. Well, if you need help or anything else, let me know. I will. I looked at her longer than usual, and she didn't look away. But then we both turned away. I think she just got angry, watching me work the punching bag. Nevertheless, I remembered her words just in case Joanne messed up again. But she didn't. On the way home, I stopped by a trendy spy shop and bought some gadgets. So, now I have 2 recorders. One very small, resembling a pen. In fact, it was a pen, but it also made up to 12 hours of recording, supposedly voice, activated. I put it in Joanne's purse when I got home. There was a small risk that she would notice it. Considering the state of her purse, I could remotely download data from it. The other recorder was placed in our main room, hidden under the sofa next to the bedroom door. I could turn it on and off using a remote control. I left it on when I wasn't home and usually turned it off when I was. On Saturday evening, we went to the movies, then got ice cream. Sunday was also relaxed. I watched a football match on TV. Joanne read a romance novel. We had dinner at home and went to bed early. I felt much better, especially since both recorders were in place. On Monday morning, we went to work. I gave Joanne the envelopes to pass on to her team. I knew she would do it because I believed she loved me, and saw this scheme as a way to keep us together and allow her to continue working at the firm. Moreover, I had my recording devices. My trust was lacking. hence the necessity for the devices. I biked to work. It was a regular day, and I made fried chicken for dinner when Joanne came in around 6 p.m. "How did your team like my envelopes?" I gathered them all in the conference room, one of those without bugs. They were all worried about Friday. I told them you figured out what was happening right away. I said you asked me to quit my job, but I wanted to stay. Then you came up with this plan. I handed them the envelopes. They all became unhappy quickly. It's interesting because it took them some time to appreciate what you had done. Everyone except Paul, who understood immediately. He actually smiled as he read. "Anyway," she continued, "I must admit there were many sideways glances at me, but then everyone just left and got back to their work. I don't think the team will last long. Maybe just a day or so. If I were a manager, I'd split us up." Later, I listened to the downloaded material. The meeting went exactly as she had described. However, I found that after that, everything else was so mundane, it became pointless. So much for technical solutions. Even though I saved Joanne, I was on the verge of breaking down over our marriage. I couldn't constantly watch over her, and I wasn't sure about her unwavering fidelity. She had plenty of opportunities to deceive me. Women like her constantly fell for seducers. Strong pressure, soft pressure, subtle pressure, but pressure nonetheless. Maybe she learned her lesson. Maybe she learned her lesson. Maybe not. I decided we needed another talk. This was about 4 weeks after the incident. Her team was dispersed in different directions, but they all stayed in the DC office except for Lydia. She was the one I was least worried about. One evening after work, before dinner, I sat at the kitchen table with 2 glasses of wine. "Joanne, we need to talk," I said. This alarmed her. She sat down and looked at me. "What? I thought we're good. Actually good." "It seems I can't shake off the trust issue, even with your confession. You know, there are some loopholes in that document. I'd like a better explanation of why you agreed to cheat on me with Fred." God, I liked him. I found him attractive. And I didn't think you'd ever find out, as it was supposed to be just once. It's a lesson I've learned. I love you and want to be with you only. But you knew it was risky. Your entire office knew what was up. If you had thought about it logically, you'd have to have backed off. But I think you had a real passion for Fred. So strong that you risked your marriage, and he risked your marriage. And he risked his. It makes me feel belittled that you were so taken with him. I can't do anything about that. I told you, I'd be honest. Anyway, I'll never know what it could have been like. So, in some way, he took my place. I don't see this as a one-off. Maybe you thought so, if you thought at all. No, he never took your place. She snuffled again and furiously threw herself at me. Calm down. I just needed this conversation. I hope you'll analyze what you've said and use it to avoid another episode. Because another episode will finish us. There won't be another time. You know, this was all tied to your work. The tension of the case brought people working together. One thing led to another. And you'll have the same dynamics on the next project. I just hope you foresee this and stop it before we reach a catastrophe. I'll keep all that in mind. Don't worry. She looked at me. Let's go upstairs, she said. We can eat later. We went upstairs and ate much later, warming up leftovers again. The following week, I took the opportunity to install a program on her phone, hidden within the programming base. I could monitor her messages and the numbers she dialed. From time to time, I listened to the recorder. 3 months, and nothing happened. I asked for a talk after dinner. I think we should try for a family. Now's the time. Oh, Jerry, I'm not sure. What about my work? You want kids. Better now than later when you'll have much more on your mind. You can work during pregnancy. After that, you'll have to take a little leave. but I can help. My job isn't as demanding as yours. I've been dabbling in day trading, and it's been going well. We have enough money to look for a house. What do you say? Okay, if we find a house we like, I'm in. We indeed found a house across the river but still close. It had 3 bedrooms, a nice kitchen, a patio, and was in a respectable neighborhood. I bought it. I paid for it outright, and it was registered in my name. Joanne didn't like that, but I insisted. I told her it was money I had earned, and the house was my gift to her and our future family. Anyway, if we divorced, the house would be treated as if it were jointly owned. She agreed. We moved, and it was 3 months before she got pregnant. We had a boy, Jacob. Joanne returned to work 2 months later. A nice lady came during the day while I arranged my bank job to be mostly independent contract work from home. I made deals with other banks, reviewed contracts, and did random work that, in others' opinion, nobody was supposed to do. I also continued my day trading. I got even better at it. When Jacob was 3, Joanne got pregnant again and worked hard until she gave birth. Twins. Of course, we knew in advance it would be a girl and a boy, Jennifer and Todd. This time, my mom came to help with the kids. She and my dad moved to Arlington. Joanne returned to work 3 weeks later. Jacob was enchanted with his siblings, as was I. I enjoyed being a father. I quit the bank and started working solo as a consultant on the mechanics of bank mergers. Mostly I worked from home, on the computer and phone. My mom spent less time with the kids, saying she needed to see Dad more. They retired and went traveling. Joanne became a partner in her firm when Paul retired. The kids are now 10 and 7. We're both 30, 6 and looking respectable. Well, that's the story. Joanne was never really close to her parents. They lived far from here. We saw them over holidays, maybe 1 week in the summer for vacation. When her father fell ill, she visited him, but he worsened and soon passed away. Joanne had 2 sisters who lived near her mother. So, after the funeral, Joanne immediately returned to work. I began to worry because she was working so much. I wondered again if she was drifting away from me, or perhaps had fallen for someone else. Our marital life was fine, considering the presence of children, but now they were old enough, and we had more time for ourselves. Nonetheless, the intensity of our life together did not increase. Joanne was also not the busiest mother. She certainly loved the kids. She played games with them, wrestled on the floor with the twins, made them do their homework when she was home. They loved her too. But day to day, it was me who raised them. I took them to school and back home. I went to their soccer games and coached them. My work took less and less of my time, but I still spent a few hours at the gym every week. I sparred and worked on the bags. Sometimes I came home with bruises or cuts. It had become the norm. Joanne organized a celebration party for her partnership. It was a dance dinner at the Hyatt. The firm was large, and the dinner had over 100 people attending. This dinner was not only for her. 2 other colleagues of hers also became partners. Fred was already a partner. A year ago, we even went to his dinner. He brought his wife, who was very attractive. They now had 3 children too. We had a pleasant evening at that party. Fred and I politely talked when I shook his hand. After all this time, there were no macho tricks. Fred and his wife were also at the partnership party. When the dancing started, I danced with Joanne for a while. Then we sat down again. A younger man approached Joanne and asked her to dance. Joanne said, "Jerry, this is William Pullen. He works at our firm." She allowed him to take her hand, and they went down to the dance floor. While they were dancing, Fred sat next to me. It was just us at the table then. "If I were you, Jerry, I'd keep an eye on Mr. Pullen," Fred whispered. Just a couple of words. "I remember our little problem, and I wouldn't want to be accused of not warning you, even after all this time." I watched them dance. Are they close at work? Close. They work together every day. I'm sure she's mentioned him. No. As far as I remember, no. Fred said, I remember what it was like when she and I got close. The dynamics might be similar to this. That's all I want to say. I don't think anything too bad has happened yet. Thanks for the tip. I'd never want to spoil things with you and your family. Except, one case. That won't happen. Fred stood up and walked away. Pullen and Joanne stayed on the dance floor for another dance. It was a slow song. I was very attentive. Pullen was over 6 feet tall, with a swimmer's build. He moved well. He had sandy hair and blue eyes. These two didn't seem involved in anything untoward. They just looked like a dancing couple. Perhaps that's how Joanne and I appeared too. I was a bit worried. I thought about asking her about it. And if they continued to dance, I thought about intervening. But after the slow dance, he escorted Joanne back to our table. She asked him to sit, and he did. Joanne said, Jerry, William, and I have been working on the Monroe case for some time. I thought you should meet. Hello, he said. Hello. How long have you been at the firm? About a year. I came from New York to work at Congress, but Monroe has taken up a lot of my time. Is it ending soon? Or, Joanne said, we hope this case is close to concluding, but nothing is set in stone. It's a regulatory issue. We're presenting it next month. Oh, I said. I wanted to yawn, but I didn't. Where are you staying, William? I have an apartment in Northeast Short. I thought I'd be spending time on the hill. Maybe that will come later. I can still bike to work. I used to do that. But now I'm mostly at home, Joanne said. Jerry runs his own consulting business for banks. He can do it from our home and make sure everything is okay with the kids. It's good terms for us. Yes, sounds ideal. Pullen smiled. I didn't like his smile, but I didn't react. Well, he said, I'll go. Need to get home early. Someone waiting. Yep. He left, giving us a slight wave. I watched as Joanne watched him. She turned to me and saw that I was looking at her. Intently looking. He's a good guy, Jerry. It seemed like she was a bit defensive. I'll take your word for it, though I haven't heard about him. Why? I don't know. I thought I mentioned him. We've been working together for some time. I guess we just haven't talked much about my work lately. Yes, I guess that's true. Let's dance some more before we leave. The rest of the night went well. We enjoyed dancing. When we got home, we had fun in bed. Better than in a long time. The next day, Saturday, I took out my recorder and put it in Joanne's purse. I just didn't feel comfortable around her. Of course, I didn't need her straying, considering our children and all. The recorder and phone program, new for the new phone, were just to ease me. When Joanne came home from work that Monday, I found time to sit at my laptop and download the recording. When she went to bed early, I listened to the recording through headphones. I didn't like what I heard. Early in the morning, a conversation between Joanne and Pullen took place. Hi, Will. Come in. Sounds of a chair on the carpet. I enjoyed our dance Friday night. Thanks. Hope Jerry wasn't annoyed. I admit, I was surprised when you asked me to dance when he was there. I told you. I saw Fred talking to Jerry while we danced. And what does that have to do with us? Anyway, he didn't seem hostile at all. And we didn't do anything bad, nothing even suspicious. Fred and I were close a long time ago. Jerry and he almost exchanged blows right on the street. And nothing happened. Well, maybe it should have. But it didn't. And still, he said, nothing has happened with us, yet. Jerry will be on guard, I tell you. Whatever we might want, I won't risk my family. He would leave me. And he might just beat you up. He was going to beat up Fred. He can't beat either of us. And why would he leave you? You're the breadwinner for the family. Huh, somehow he's making a ton of money on stocks. I don't even know how much, but he bought our house outright 12 years ago or so. Besides, don't be tempted to pick a fight with him. You've been warned. Why does he even have to find out? We could be careful. I know you want this. No chance, Buster. Whatever I might want. Time to get to work. I was more than a little annoyed by what I heard. I could see that, given even half a chance, they would already be sharing a bed. I saw the same situation as with Fred. As Fred had said, I had to think about whether I wanted to save Joanne this time or not. I felt an inevitability of divorce due to Joanne's infidelity. Sooner or later, she would stray, most likely with a colleague from the firm. I pondered what a divorce would look like. I thought about the kids. I assumed I would get custody, and she would be able to see them on a schedule. Our finances were not an issue. I had plenty of money, but she also had a very high-paying job. I'd also transferred a decent amount to offshore accounts. Her law firm would probably find something. Not everything. Anyway, if she got rich after the divorce, I would still be wealthy, and I still had my little trading talent. Overall, I wasn't too scared of a divorce. If it happened, I had to do everything in my power to protect the kids from too much trauma. I didn't think Joanne really wanted to be a guardian. This made me think about what her life would be like after the divorce. She really had no friends, even close ones. Sometimes she met with women from her work, but she was really completely absorbed by her work. I had guys at the gym, and women too, at the gym. I was friendly with other parents and occasionally went out for drinks with my fellow coaching colleagues. I went to ball games with two of these guys, and we got to know each other quite well, but Joanne wasn't as friendly. She spent so little time at home to be able to engage in friendly interactions. While I knew some guys from our area and their wives, Joanne really didn't know anyone. I arranged with my parents, who were in town, to take the kids from Friday to Sunday in the afternoon. Now, I spent a lot of time listening to recordings and checking messages and phone numbers. I wanted to see how far things had gone. Between the two of them, a conversation took place. Apparently, the case suddenly turned out to be close to conclusion. Joanne said, "Will, I think we can finish this in about 2 weeks. We might have to go to New York to wrap up the work. Maybe we could do it midweek and stay overnight." You're a bad boy, Will. I think Jerry would not like the idea of us going away overnight at all. Just tell him it's necessary and he should trust you. That's all. He's not a fool. He would have some way to check on what we're doing. He doesn't trust me. Don't tell him until the night after next. Then he won't be able to arrange anything. Of course he could. He could just drive with me, offer to take me to a show, and I would have to go along with it. Listen, Joanne, when this case is over, I want to celebrate with you and only you. Alone. You want that too, right? Yes. I'll figure something out. We could just get a room in the city, or you could come to mine, on a work day. I think that could work, Joanne said. Take a cab, stay from lunch till dinner. Might work more than once if all goes well. Joanne laughed. I'm off. See you tomorrow. The door opened and closed. That evening, when the kids went upstairs, I called Joanne to the kitchen table to talk. She looked apprehensive. I believe that you and your assistant Pullen have become too close. I've lost trust in you. I thought about just letting it all slide this time, and you'd reap what you've sown. But I thought I owed you more than that, and thought about our kids. When Joanne heard this, she was overwhelmed with emotions, sadness, and anger. Her face was about to crumple, but then she composed herself and sat upright. I don't deny that I have feelings for William. I would very much like to act on them. Are you saying you were just going to let it happen? I was prepared for that. Then we'd just have to divorce. It would be the end of us. But I thought we could discuss this before any of that happened. I love you, and am doing everything I can to stop this before you go too far." "Well," she snorted, "thank you so much." "Joanne, seriously, it's on your conscience. You need to either control yourself or decide to start a new life. I hope before you make a decision, you think about what that new life could be like. You'd have a fun affair. And what after that? Would you really divorce me over an affair? Absolutely no doubts about it. I don't want a divorce. What I really want? Well, I think I need some leeway." "What does that mean? You want to have affairs and not get divorced. Dream on. Why can't I get, just once, the chance to experience someone else? You can experience all you want. I'll file the papers on Monday. Make arrangements to move out as soon as possible. You'll be sleeping on the living room couch tonight." "Jerry, stop. I was just joking. I wouldn't wreck our marriage." "You weren't joking. We both know it. I won't believe any promise from you. I don't want to take on the burden of constantly watching you. Anyway, you could just sneak off with that boy during the day." "We're done." Joanne asked, "What about the kids?" "You can spend as much time with them as you do now, maybe more, given they rarely see you." Okay, if that's what you want. But if you give me a bit of leeway this time, I'll never ask again. Until the next big case. That's it, go." Joanne stood up and packed her bag. She left and checked into a motel, where she spent the night. The next morning, she dressed and went to work. Will entered her office right after 9. 0 am. "We can do this today. I have nothing urgent. Neither do you. Okay, let's have lunch at your place. At noon." "Great. Jerry kicked me out last night. I stayed at a hotel. I asked him for permission. Well, to have an affair. Just once. He turned cold and threw me out. I told him I was joking. He didn't believe me. I guess I wouldn't believe me either." "What are you going to do? Divorce?" Will looked concerned. "I'll try not to. I'm not sure he's serious. If he divorces you and claims adultery, we could both have problems. Maybe we should cool it." "I don't want to. I want my affair with you. Today." Will was overtaken by desire. It clouded his judgment. Okay. They met right at the office entrance at noon, then took a taxi and went to his place. Will unlocked the door. Joanne turned and hugged him. They fell next to each other. "Was it worth the risk, Joanne?" "Oh, yes." She smiled at him. They spent the rest of the day in his bed, or close to it. They didn't even have lunch. At 6, Will said he had to leave, and Joanne got dressed. She thought about trying to return home. Jerry couldn't know what she had done. Maybe he had changed his mind. She made sure to tidy herself up before leaving. Then she caught a taxi across the river. The house was empty. Joanne thought the kids were probably at some extracurricular activity. She sat in her kitchen and ate a sandwich. Then she drank a beer. Then she looked around at everything around her where she had lived for so long. If she had to leave, she would be sad. She decided to brazenly talk to Jerry. He couldn't possibly know what she had done, she told herself. She could promise him that she would be faithful. She could point out that she had been faithful to him since her slip with Fred, which wasn't a slip at all. It was so long ago. Jerry and the kids came around 7 p.m. They had been playing kids' basketball. All the kids were eager to tell her about it. Jerry just sat aside and watched. After they all ate, Jerry sent the kids upstairs to get ready for bed. "Why are you here, Joanne?" "I thought I made myself perfectly clear. I've decided to retract my request for leeway. I realize that was a big mistake. I take my words back. I just want to stay with you and the kids." "Too bad. Where were you this afternoon when I tried to call?" "I had a meeting with client. We have a phone app that allows us to find each other's phones. I used it when you weren't at work. You were at Will's apartment for several hours. Any comment is pointless. So what was this meeting? How? How could you check up on me like that? How could I not? You spent the whole day sleeping with this guy, and now you show up here saying you retract your request for leeway. Such nonsense. We are done, he said it emphatically, but without shouting. Jerry went upstairs to put the kids to bed. He made them comfortable. They were all tired after a long day. When he came downstairs, Joanne was sitting at the table. I'm sorry I did that. I won't do it again. I still don't know why I did it. Just leave, Joanne. Wait. Tell me, was it worth it to lose your marriage and family? Because I think you believed it was worth it, and that's why you did it. Yes, it was good. I liked it. Jerry was indifferent. I'll file the papers as soon as I can. Don't come back here. I'll send movers to take your things to where you can pick them up. Maybe to Will's, huh? Joanne left. The divorce was easy for both sides. Joanne insisted on liberal visitation, but financially. She was fine and asked for nothing. Jerry didn't seek alimony either. The kids quickly adapted to the new reality. Joanne picked them up every other Sunday for the whole day. Eventually, they saw her almost as often as before. Joanne and Will's relationship lasted about a month. Then she became wary. He started seeing a younger woman. She didn't object, but she didn't like the risk of catching diseases. They ended their relationship. Joanne wasn't too upset about it. She had been much better off with Jerry, who was far more inventive. Jerry was content with how things turned out, except for Will. He couldn't be allowed to get away without a bellyache. Jerry used some time in the middle of the day to study Will. He also observed him from time to time. At first, he saw him with Joanne, but later with another attractive blonde. He guessed that Joanne and Will were no longer involved. Jerry hired a firm to conduct further investigations and surveillance on Will. He asked a lawyer to review the documents compiled by the firm where Will had signed a contract. Jerry found out that Will was an amateur boxer, sang in the church choir, and had relationships with several women, none of whom really knew about the others. He also found out that the law firm had paid for far more hours on Will's behalf than he had actually worked. Jerry didn't think all this was a ploy to play a joke on Will. He had been caught. One day, as Jerry was jogging, Will ran up behind him and pushed him sharply. They were in the park near Jerry's house. At the moment of the push, there was no one nearby. It was after 11 on a Saturday. The kids were with Joanne. Jerry realized he could take advantage of Will's arrogance. Jerry, I know you're investigating and watching me. Stop it. Joanne and I are over. I do what I want, Jerry growled. He laughed at Will. What are you laughing at? I took your wife. Not so funny, right? The road is wide open. I see you didn't keep her for long. Did she find someone better? Huh, you're one of those who only talk. Jerry saw Will becoming more and more agitated. Some people entered the park, but he didn't see them. Will was very tense, as if he had come for more than just talk. Jerry decided to push things along. Old or not, I could beat you like a drum with anything. So just back off. Jerry said this, but began to back away from Will. Encouraged by Jerry's apparent retreat, Will stepped towards him and then pushed Jerry hard. Jerry took the blow and fell backwards. He intentionally went down. Will stepped over to Jerry and, letting go of him, kicked him in the stomach. Jerry absorbed the blow, rolling to the side. He anticipated this would happen. He hardly felt the blow, though he had a bruise the next day. People who had come into the park ran up to Will, shouting at him to stop. Jerry jumped up when Will got momentarily distracted. He pushed Will. Jerry mocked him. Attacking a guy shorter and older than you. You should be ashamed. Will was on the verge because of this. He knew Jerry was mocking him. He launched a full attack on Jerry. The people around the scene, 2 men and a woman, were too timid to intervene. Jerry let Will get closer, then spun around and punched him in the stomach. A loud oof sound was heard. He hit Will hard and knew it hurt him. Jerry stepped back and Will fell to his knees, clutching his stomach. Jerry turned and walked away. The whole incident took less than 2 minutes, and the real damage done to Will was inflicted in 20 seconds. The onlookers approached him and helped him up. Jerry crossed the street and ran away. As he did, he saw a police car approaching the park with flashing lights, but no siren. Jerry never heard from the police or Will about the fight. He assumed the witnesses told the cops that Will started the fight and then lost it. Or maybe he just refused to file a complaint. Jerry decided that fighting with Will was enough. He knew he had tricked him, and if they clashed again, Will might win. The two never saw each other again. Meanwhile, Joanne analyzed the whole situation, hoping to understand how she could lose control for Will. She gave up a good marriage and family life for an affair with Will. Looking back, it could be said it was monstrously foolish. Joanne decided that it wasn't really Will she wanted so badly to give up her family for. It was her job, work. That was what she was most passionate about. What she couldn't understand was that the affair was her way of distancing herself from her family. It allowed her to work without the guilt brought by not fitting the mom paradigm. Now, the family was neatly divided into 2 parts, her part being every other Sunday. Jerry moved forward smoothly. He began dating about a year after the breakup, meeting a nice woman, a single mother of 8-year-old twins. Her name was Naomi. They had several pleasant dinner dates. Then he invited her and her children over for a Saturday. They all got along well with each other. Jerry was happy because he liked Naomi a lot. He asked her to go with him for a weekend getaway. They arranged for the kids, left on Friday, and had a wonderful time. About 6 months later, he proposed to her. She accepted, and the families were blended. Jerry had to buy a new house with more bedrooms, further from the city. He missed the old house, which was now rented out, but the new one had a pool and a pool table. In the basement was a heavy bag, just for Jerry. Jerry was pleased with how things turned out. He had no regrets about leaving Joanne, despite their long marriage. She was an unfaithful workaholic. He was convinced Naomi wouldn't cheat. She was an elementary school teacher, not a lawyer under pressure. He felt no need to watch her as he did with Joanne. It was much more comfortable and allowed for greater love to grow. It truly did grow. Jerry and Naomi both considered family the center of their lives. Their blended family occupied them and brought satisfaction.